Welcome to our most expensive episode yet, and probably my favorite because we're taking a look at ribeye steaks. We're going to go over each of the steaks individually now and kind of talk about which ones had certain characteristics, and then help you make your choice on which store to shop at. Take a look at the intermuscular fat and the price per pound here, and that'll give you an idea of what we're kind of comparing. Again, this is a bit of a pseudoscience channel because nothing's really going to be fully objective here. There's a lot of opinion and some subjective stuff to it, so take it with a grain of salt. The Trader Joe's ones here, for instance, was a little bit thinner and longer, had a lot more fat on one end, and you can just kind of tell that all the different meat suppliers do have some differences between them, though Aldi and Target were more similar than the other ones as they were both Black Angus. Again, this prime cut right here is not to be compared to the other ones. It's just gonna be a reference to see if we can even taste the difference, and then also to kind of point out that better cuts of meat are better. First up is our Walmart one. You can see the marbling on the spinalis on that outer ring is really nice. The rest of it looks okay, and there is some oxidation, and the cut isn't great. You can kind of see someone botched part of the cutting. That's kind of what I expected from Walmart. Next is Publix. I had high hopes for this one. I heard they were a really good meat supplier and that most of their stuff was really good. This one was oxidized more than other ones, and that was probably due to my fault, and we didn't cut any of the oxidation off because in all my testing, I've never tasted it before. Next, this one is the Aldi Angus cut. Again, nice thick steak. About 12 bucks a pound, so really great price. Compared to Target, which is again Black Angus as well, and it was 15 bucks a pound, it was a little more affordable and also a little bit thicker. Trader Joe's was pretty proud of theirs. It was a weird looking one though, and it was rather thin, so I was not the biggest fan of it. It also just didn't seem like it was maybe the best ribeye I could have grabbed. Last is the Waygu one. This was totally different. It was melted in my hand, it smelled different. In the end, also I would say don't get this steak unless you're planning to sample it instead of eat it by yourself. It's very, very rich. I'm a firm believer in a process called dry brining. Basically, it's where you take your steaks, salt them, and then throw them in the fridge overnight uncovered. This ends up pulling a lot of the moisture out of them and also allows the salt to penetrate deeply into them. Not really good use of the word penetrate, but supposedly it does make the meat taste a little bit better, and we've definitely noticed a difference. Here's what a choice one looks like up close, and you can compare that to the next one, which is prime, a lot more intermuscular fat, and then the Waygu one, different color, more fat, and the fat's also different color. Just kind of showing you that this really goes to show there's probably a difference between these cows genetically and definitely in their feed, and also why we had to do choice versus choice and we couldn't compare prime and Waygu in that same bucket. Here's what they all look like post dry brine. You can see that the Walmart one stiffened up quite a bit and that the color kind of looked a little bit better. A little more oxidation as well on the bottom of it, but again, oxidation at this minimal level doesn't change the flavor at all, it just makes it look ugly. And they're all gonna look terrible coming out of the sous vide. Everything kind of looked pretty good here. The only points of concern I think was the Target one. It smelled kind of funky. And then this Waygu one also melted in my hand like crazy. So those are the only two weird things I noticed. And just to reiterate, we're not gonna compare the Waygu and the prime ones, the choice ones, and you can see why here. We decided to sous vide all the steaks so we get the most even cook possible. I knew I could do a quick reverse sear and nothing would be affected as much as a traditional method. We seasoned them all with the same seasoning as well. Go ahead and sue me and not doing salt, pepper, garlic powder. We've done 5 or 6 seasonings side by side, and this is by far our favorite. If you're a purist about steaks, I'm sorry, you should have closed your eyes and plugged your ears, but too bad, and we're here now. We wedged them into the sous vide cooking rack, which is another great part about sous vide because you can cook quite a bit of meat and then you don't have to monitor every 5 seconds, and it turns out great. I kind of just dunked them in here for show because I didn't want to burn my hand at 135 degrees, but basically it was 135 for 2 hours, and they came out looking like really ugly sous vide steaks because that's what sous vide does. The opened one on the table actually was smoked, and you kind of see it's pretty ugly too when you pull it off and look at it through a camera lens. They all looked a lot better once I seared them on some cast iron outside and then drenched them in butter. Again, everything was the same on these, the same amount of sear time and everything. I did pat them all dry before doing the sear, though number 2 here looked terrible compared to the others and also suffered in the taste department. Poor number 2. So here's the numbering scheme. Number 1 is Walmart, number 2 is Publix, 3 is Trader Joe's, 4 is Aldi, 5 is Target, 6 is the Waygu, and the unlabeled one is the Sam's Club Prime. Taste-wise, number 1 and number 2 were definitely not as good as the rest. Number 2 really suffered, I think mostly just due to the sear it was given. It was a little bit overcooked, and I would like to give Publix another try, but it was probably the least favorite one. Followed by Walmart. The Walmart one looked great. I had really high hopes for it. I was hoping I could save a couple bucks on steaks in the future, but it was very, very plain. You could hardly taste the beef flavor through it. So while it looks great here when it's raw, was not great. Next was Trader Joe's. It just kind of hung out in the number 3 spot. The spinalis on it was fantastic, but the rest of it was just not as good, and I think mostly because the other ones were so much thicker cut, it was less impressive because of that. Number 4 and number 5 came in the number 1 and 2 spot. Actually, they were kind of both tied for number 1, to be honest. Aldi and the Target one out of our little test group both scored even, and when we did a blind taste test, we couldn't tell the difference between the two. Aldi and Target were both fantastic, and I think that was probably due to the Black Angus cuts that they were. So to answer that question of is it better, or even in this case, which one is better, I would say there's a difference. There are ones that better, and it's probably up a little bit to your personal preference. Black Angus meat really does have a better flavor in my opinion. The prime and the Wagyu here, they did not compare to the rest. The Wagyu was really rich, and you really can't sit down and eat that by yourself, so it's a great tasting steak, but you'd probably kill yourself trying to eat it. And then the prime one from Sam's Club, it was smoked instead of sous vide, which I prefer, and oh my gosh, it was so much better. So the wrap up here, if it's like a $2 difference, go prime for sure. If not, the Black Angus beef cuts from anywhere probably are better than the normal ones. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe.